Imagine showing up to a football game and rooting for a team that doesn't want you to root for them. Why is it so hard for some people to understand that immigrants are not wanted in the United States? They don't care if you're legal. They don't care if you're illegal. They don't care how you vote, how you dress, what accent you speak English with. They don't want immigrant. You're an immigrant. Doesn't matter how you vote, how you dress, if you follow the laws, if you came here legally or illegally. They don't want you here. You are unwanted. Cubans, Russians, a few of these nationalities don't understand that they're not wanted here. They think if they vote for a certain political party, or if they please certain individuals, or if they put a certain bumper sticker on their car, all of a sudden they're like an American. Don't you understand you're not like them and you're not wanted in this country? On today's video, we're going to talk about Cubans getting deported. Cubans are one of those nationalities that they think if they vote a certain way and they put a bumper sticker on their car, all of a sudden they become an American. You are not an American. You're not wanted here. You're going to get the deportation order too. For a long time, I have been telling Cubans that they are rooting for a team that they're not part of, but they just don't understand it. ICE is targeting Cubans in Florida for deportations more than any other nationality. During the election time, the Republicans promised the Cuban community, which usually votes Republican, that they could vote for them and not have to worry about family members getting deported, that the vast majority of deportations were going to target Guatemalans and Mexicans and other people. They could just go ahead and cast their vote and not have to worry about their family members who recently arrived getting deported. Many bloggers and other news networks hop behind the idea. In Miami, all the Spanish news networks said, oh, we don't have to worry as a Cuban community. These deportations are only for Mexicans, Guatemalans, and other people, and that the Cuban Act and the Republican Party were going to take care of them, and that those deportation orders were not going to be affecting the Cuban community. Well, here we are a few months into this, and I'm looking through arrest records for ICE, and it seems that nobody in the state of Florida is getting arrested for ICE deportations more than Cubans, more than Guatemalans, more than Mexicans. It seems like ICE is going after Cubans predominantly in the state of Florida more than anybody else. We saw all the big Cubans, bloggers, networks, everybody repeat to everybody in Florida that Cubans didn't have to worry, that they're going to continue voting Republican and that their community wouldn't be targeted by ICE and immigration. Now, it didn't take much to figure out that that wasn't the rhetoric being preached on Fox News and English-speaking news networks, but they sent their people down to Miami to tell the Cubans everything they needed to hear so they could guarantee the vote. And now that they got the vote, they got the power, they're not going to do what the Cubans want. They just needed the vote. And here we are now. The reality is that Cubans thought that they would not be targeted by immigration, but the reality is that nobody's being targeted more than Cubans. Let's take a look at some of these recent arrests that will confirm to you the reality that ICE is going after Cubans in the state of Florida. And you know, for one, when I saw those politicians in Miami telling the Cuban community that they didn't have to worry, it didn't fool me because I was hearing what they were saying on English news networks and it didn't correlate with that. Which just goes to show that when it comes to politicians, the only thing they care about is getting the vote. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I wasn't personally fooled at all by this situation. I knew for a fact that these Cubans that are coming to Florida now are all going to get deported. And why Cubans think that they're going to vote Republican, which is spreading, anti-immigrant sentiment, and at the same time be able to bring their immigrant family over here, it's kind of puzzling. But this is the confusion that many Cubans have, to think that they're Republicans when Republicans hate immigrants more than anything else, and they themselves are immigrants. It's kind of a very confusing place to be in, and I personally know a lot of Cubans who voted Republican and now are wondering if the people that live in their own households are going to get deported. It's a very confusing place to be, and that's where a lot of Cubans are right now. For the most part, Spanish news networks in Florida spent about a month or two telling people They're only going to deport criminals. You may have even heard Grady Judd when he speaks in front of podium in Polk County in front of all those Cubans talking about, we're only going to deport criminals. If you're a good, hard-working people, you don't have to worry about deportations. Well, meet a Cuban female that has a deportation hold. She was arrested in Sarasota yesterday, and she has a deportation hold with no criminal charges. Just a plain old deportation order with no criminal charges attached. She is now on an ICE immigration hold. Her address is listed as, check this out, are you ready for it? A dairy farm in Sebring, Florida. Now, I personally wouldn't even want to drive past a dairy farm in Sebring, Florida, let alone have to work at one. So go figure, this individual is here getting a deportation order. She's Cuban, she's working at a dairy farm, she has no criminal charges, then all of a sudden she gets a deportation order out of nowhere. Keep in mind that the state of Florida has a lot of Cubans that arrived recently with a temporary status. They're not guaranteed to stay here, and all of those Cubans are now wondering what's going to happen to them. The most interesting part is that those Cubans were brought here by other Cubans who mostly voted Republican, are now scratching their heads wondering if the people that they recently had smuggled over here are going to get deported. And let's not even get into the fact that many of these Cubans told U.S. Customs when they arrived that they were fleeing Cuba for a life-threatening situation. And the moment they get their residency, what do you think the first thing they do is? Go back and travel to Cuba, because now they can't get deported with a residency, allegedly, right? This is what these Cubans are doing. When they come to U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, they tell them, I have to leave Cuba. It's a national emergency. I fled for my safety. I had to leave my country. I had to come here because that's the vocabulary that they have to use in order to receive asylum from the United States. And then the second that they receive their residency, they go back to Cuba on vacation, like if it wasn't a dangerous place 2 years ago when they applied for their residency. Even worse than that, as I Uber drive, I've met Cubans who are here on a temporary status and are already preaching a Republican narrative to me in the backseat of my Uber ride, even though they haven't even received a driver's license yet and are very soon going to find out that they're getting a deportation order. I've met Cubans who were police officers and Communist Party officials in Cuba, and the moment they arrive in Miami decide that they're going to vote for Republicans and wear a Trump hat. That's a very fast transformation. But the only thing faster than the transformation Cubans are going through from being communists to being Republicans is the deportation orders that are coming their way very soon. Meet Jorge Luis from Pinellas County, Florida. He currently is under arrest for a deportation order hold, and he has less than $80 in commissary to get by until they deport him. This is one of these Cuban arrivals that came here recently and now has the deportation order. Keep in mind that in Tampa you have a lot of Cubans. Pinellas County is part of the Tampa metropolitan area, and many of the Cubans here assume that they would never see Cubans getting deported. Turns out that in Pinellas County in particular, no other nationality but Cubans is being arrested more. More than Hondurans, more than Guatemalans, more than Mexicans. In Pinellas County, it's Cubans they want to get rid of. Meet Oliver Dominguez out of Pinellas County right outside of Tampa. He is being held right now on a ICE hold in Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and he ain't even got money for commissary. He's up in there washing people's socks to get money to eat, but pretty soon he's going to get deported back to Cuba, so he won't even need those US dollars. Meet Freddy Osorio out of Pinellas County. Now, he got picked up by the U.S. Marshals, and he has a deportation ICE hold. He's going back to Cuba soon. Meet Enrique Jairo. He's also in Pinellas County, and he also has a deportation ICE hold, and he's only got $127 in commissary. Somebody please hook this brother up with some Cheerios. Yet another Cuban in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office with an ICE immigration hold. When you look at the people that are getting ICE holds out of Pinellas County, no nationality leads the list more than Cubans. And in Sarasota, Cubans are being targeted as well. So we can see clearly that when it comes to deportation orders in the state of Florida, Cubans are now being targeted more than any other nationality. I am personally not surprised by this. I don't know what made these Cubans think that this situation wasn't going to happen exactly the way it did. When it comes to politics in the United States, Cubans are like toilet paper the politicians use to clean themselves, and once they're done, they flush you down the toilet. Barack Obama his last day in office, he got rid of the wet foot, dry foot law. Now, he did that because Cubans were mostly coming to the United States and instantly voting Republican, and they figured that if they could stop the influx of Republicans from Cuba, they could fix the polls and keep Democrats in power in Florida, allegedly, right? That was the idea behind it. So in his last day in office, Barack Obama gets rid of the wet foot, dry foot law, which means that Cubans could no longer come to the United States. So let's be clear. When it comes to Cubans in the United States, neither Democrats nor Republicans give a crap about Cubans. When Florida was a tight swing state, both Democrats and Republicans played the piano and the trumpets for Cubans to try to get them to vote for them. But now that Florida is no longer a swing state, they are sure that they don't need Cubans for anything. And this is the reality of politics that people do not understand. People think that these politicians are going to be loyal to them, that they give people their vote, that these politicians are going to come through for them. The only thing politicians care about is getting the votes so they can get the power, and then they can make the money for them and their buddies on their team. And this is what a lot of people don't understand about politicians. Neither Republicans nor Democrats have given a crap about Cubans. Many years back, they used to play favorites for Cubans because it was a swing state and they needed a million extra votes. Cuba is replete with recent arrivals to the United States. And the crazy difference between Cubans and other nationalities is that many of the people that are coming to Florida from Cuba are actually female. So when you look at deportations, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of people that are getting deported back to Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico are males. But when you look at Cuba, there's actually a lot of females that are getting deported because the situation in Cuba is just hunger. It's completely different than all these other nationalities. Mexico and Guatemala are still functioning states. Cuba is not a functioning state. You're seeing a lot of females coming to the United States on temporary status, people that are coming here to work in hotels, hospitality, even freaking dairy farms. I would love to see a white woman go work at a freaking dairy farm in Sebring, Florida. When you start to see the Cubans, the Haitians, the Venezuelans that are coming now to Florida, a lot of them are just working jobs that other people don't want to do. Hospitality, cleaning hotels, restaurant night shifts, drive-thrus at night. These are the types of jobs that American citizens are not going to do. Let's not even get into strawberries, watermelons, tomatoes, sugarcane, and let's not forget dairy farms in Florida. These are the types of jobs American citizens simply are not going to do, which means that if the increment in deportations in these types of areas continue to happen, we can expect without a doubt inflation in all types of categories. Let's not forget that dairy farms, orange farms, strawberry farms, anything that's agriculture in Florida is suffering tremendously because U.S. citizens are simply not going to do these jobs. It doesn't matter how much you pay them, they just are not going to do those jobs. I personally am not going to do it. I don't know about you. But the reality is that even people who hate immigrants will admit that they're not going to go work at a freaking dairy farm in Sebring, Florida. Which means that if you don't have workers at the dairy farm, you have to pay people more money to incentivize them to take these jobs. What do you think is going to happen to the price of milk, for example? It's got to go up. I just recently had an Uber passenger here in the Sarasota area that lives in the outskirts in a farm, and he was telling me that they're really struggling to find workers for their agricultural farm applications, which means that those people are either going to have to stop their operations or pay people an amount of money that will make the goods come out at a loss, which would mean the only way they could even consider making a profit would be through tremendous inflation. And this is the reality of the times we're in right now, that the cost of products is going to increase. And the economy in Florida isn't looking good. It's not like the economy in Florida is really going to produce large profits in 2025. The reality in Florida is that we're even starting to see the crime syndicates that we had in the 2010s come back to life, which means that the real estate market is dead. So all those big contractors, realtors, and developers, people that were making money in construction are now going to crime syndicates to make a living, which means large vehicle theft, anything that's cargo, anything that's commercial equipment is getting stolen because the people that were in those industries making good money on real estate and development are drying up their funds and are going back to criminal syndicates. So even if the economy is bad, there are still jobs available that just don't pay enough money for the U.S. citizen to want to make, which means that even though we're going to suffer from a bad economy, we're also going to suffer from a lack of services being affordable, a lack of products on the shelf being affordable. So you're going to have a weak economy, and on top of that, inflation. Because again, the people that work in the jobs that reduce inflation are not here while you don't have a strong economy. So people think that those things go hand in hand and they correlate back and forth together. That isn't exactly true. You're going to start to see inflation with a bad economy, which usually when you have inflation, you have an uptick in the economy, but now you're having inflation, right? And at the same time, you also have lack of a good economy, which sounds counterintuitive, but it really isn't, because again, the jobs that we need, like agriculture and farming and all the things that are out there that make food affordable, for milk and eggs and everything else to be affordable, you have to have people working those affordable jobs. So if now you have inflation on one end, you don't have workers, but the economy isn't moving, you have a situation where not only are you not making money, but then you're also paying a lot of money for everything, which is possibly one of the worst economical scenarios you could find yourself in. That's something pretty crappy. It usually happens in communist countries, like when Venezuela first took up communism. The only difference is in Venezuela, it happened because of the government's inefficiency, while here in the United States, it's happening because, well, maybe even the same exact thing. But regardless, the issue is that we're going to see inflation continue to be a problem for people in the United States, and at the same time, the economy is going to dry up. This is kind of like what happens when a communist government takes over, where you have this incredible amount of inflation because of ineffectiveness from the government. What happened in Venezuela, which made everybody leave that country, while the economy crumbled. So this is a situation where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What made Cubans think that they weren't going to get deported too? It's just crazy. What is so hard to understand about the fact that they don't want you? They don't care about you. They don't care how you vote. They don't care how you dress. They don't want you as a person here. They hate immigrants. You're an immigrant. What is so hard to understand about that notion?